So this is my action research multimedia presentation by Arellano. So in preparation needs of EL learners, English language learners or EL other students who are unable to communicate fluently or learn effectively in English, who often come from non-English speaking homes and backgrounds, and who typically require specialized or modified instruction in both the English language and in their academic courses. So me personally, I took this as my action research, and due to the fact that I am able to relate to ELL learners, and also the fact that I have experience in teaching ELL learners through my past teaching experiences. So all teachers working with ELLs must have a strong understanding of oral language. So basically, a knowledge and understanding of language as a system and the role of components and of language and speech, such as grammar, meaning, coherence, communicative strategies, and social conventions. For academic language, teachers must have a working knowledge of academic language and be able to recognize the difference between conversational language and academic language. Classroom teachers must be prepared to teach ELLs and have an understanding of the linguistic demands of academic tasks. And also for cultural diversity and inclusivity, teachers must have a working knowledge and understanding of the role of the culture in language development and academic achievement. And cultural differences often affect ELL students' classroom participation and performance in various ways. So my statement of the research problem is that ELL learners have a tough task that they encounter once they go to school in a foreign country. Learning a new language is a challenge itself, but it is important that ELL students must learn to read, write, and speak and understand English the way it's used in the classroom. Also, in addition, a teacher in the school may not properly identify what's causing the difficulty of the student and the reason why they may be overwhelmed, causing the teacher to be limited support and resources. Also, a teacher may believe that it's a lack of English language skills when it's really learning and attention issues. And due to these type of misconceptions, many ELLs get the wrong kind of help, delayed help, or no help at all. So my research questions, I focused on what challenges do ELLs face in the classroom. How can I support ELL learners in the classroom? What are the most common reasons ELLs struggle in school, and how can I identify it? And in doing so, my research question focuses on how I can support ELL learners in learning language, and also what are the learning difficulties of ELL learners in my classroom. And the main grade that I focused on was primary grade 1s. So in the definition of central and relevant terms, basically community is a group of interacting organisms sharing an environment or interests. Sustainability, humans' investment in a system or living that is projected to be viable on an ongoing basis that provides a quality of life for all individuals. And also for culture, basically refers to the patterns of human activity and the symbolic structure that gives such activity significance and importance. This includes goods created for consumption and pleasure, as well as the process which produce such goods and gives them meaning. And also, these are the literature annotated bibliography that I've taken. For example, inclusiveness, socially and academically. The first one was 10 ways to build EL vocabulary skills. Basically, this is an article that briefly discusses 10 ways to help build the vocabulary of EL students in the classroom. So some of the things that they use would be acting it out, using word walls, photographs. So basically anything that connects with differentiated learning, and also connecting different curriculums, such as, for example, drama or dance. Next one would be culturally responsive pedagogy. So this is an important aspect of teaching EL students in taking into consideration the individual, their background, and their culture. And also, I found various essays, such as a selection of essays in learning styles and English as a second language, and also supporting English language learners in the classroom. And also, finally, an article that discusses the teaching of English as a foreign language and how it is contextualized versus decontextualized various English words. So in terms of literature summaries, the roles and responsibilities supporting English language learners, basically I've listed some of the steps in which teachers should focus on. So the first would be knowing the students, knowing the language your students speak, where your students come from, and what experiences your students are bringing to the classroom. engage in challenge, provide engaging, challenging learning experience that allows all students to progress in their English language proficiency, differentiated learning. So this all highly applies in the ELL, applying in an ELL classroom, and also communicate with the ELL teacher, creating an inclusive classroom, and finally, given the chance, communicate with home. So teachers need to ensure that they are communicating regularly with families to provide updates on student learning as well as school-related communication. And also, I've written a literature review summary of what my definition of a welcoming school. So this connects with inclusivity. Once again, basically as teachers, we hear the phrases welcoming classroom all the time. But for school communities, school communities that will adopt a whole school approach for everyone, for receiving English language learners and their families into the school community. So school reception team, for example, administrator, office administrative staff, ELL teachers, interpreters, etc., will be in place, and all teachers understand the process for welcoming new English language learners. Once again, open communication will exist between the school and the families. So the school will also make available competent adult interpreters to assist the families throughout the welcoming experience. Also, the school will support a welcoming team to introduce students to the school community. Basically, an effective strategy to accomplish this is to create a team of student ambassadors who aren't new students to the school, thus creating an inclusive and welcoming school community. The school will stay in regular contact with families, providing them information about community resources and a variety of language, as well as inviting parents to the classroom and the school to celebrate student learning. And finally, we move on to my research action plan. So basically, what are your data sources and why did you select these? The first one, so as I stated before, get to know the students, identify student English language proficiency and literary development, identify critical curriculum, differentiated learning, scaffolding, monitoring, and also finally for triangulation, validity, and reliability. For triangulation, ELL learners in my grade 1 classroom, so during my research, played an active role throughout the various stages of assessment that I conducted during my placement, choosing topics on their own and choosing books on their own liking, specifically with my permission or my associate's permission, allowed each student to feel as if they have ownership of their work. Throughout each book that we did guiding reading together, I conducted a running record where each student was able to witness how they were being marked and which words they need further improvement on. In all parts of triangulation, the learner was involved. Also, in addition to taking part in conversation with other teachers and ALL helpers in the school, we discussed that learners should also be involved in discussions about final products and about data collected from observation. So in doing so, by giving the learners a role in the assessment process, the goal is to encourage students to invest in their own learning, thus increasing student motivation. Also involving EL learners and assessed by using student self-assessment where they are able to tell me what they learned and how we can approach the next step. And in continuation with triangulation, validity, and reliability. From the beginning, basically, I educated myself in knowing all the students' ethnic backgrounds, what language they speak at home, and their first language. This allowed me to create a classroom with equal opportunity for each student. Also, working with my associate, LTRs in the school, and other ELL instructors. In doing so, it allowed me to brainstorm ways to create a differentiated learning that will benefit the learners in the classroom. Also, various activities and books that I prepared consisted of topics and themes that the ELL learners could relate to. So an example of this was recently, it was Chinese New Year, and I had 2 students from China, and once I read them the book about Chinese New Year, they became very interested, and throughout that time they participated more versus books that I read to them that were kind of unrelatable or they did not show any interest in. Also, using various graphic organizers and visuals to show the connection between students' prior experience also helped. In addition, I developed learning activities that were related to Chinese New Year and compared it to Western New Year, which is celebrated on January 1st. Also, student engagement and partnering them up with other students in the class was also beneficial, as it helps support ELL learners about topics that I taught in class. For example, after reading the Chinese New Year book, we made connections and asked ELL learners to partner up with a class buddy, and they had to think about how Chinese New Year and Western New Year's are similar and different. They also, in connection with literacy and language, they had to write down what they knew about the topic and then share their ideas with their partner, and then finally presenting them in the classroom. Also, I discovered that by allowing students to use their native language in the classroom allowed me to understand their ability to learn English. Students' first language might support his or her understanding of their second language. In addition, other ways I created a classroom that supported inclusion for ELL learners were through student engagement, basically allowing ELL learners to work in pairs or small groups. And the participants and setting, basically during my observation days on my placement, I informed the vice principal, associate teacher, and the ELL learners, along with the students and various other colleagues. The data was collected in class, and other vital information were collected from previous teachers who worked with the ELL students. Also, the ELL students in class were involved in the setting that took place. In order for me to gather data was when I was able to gather them, and we discussed information during class when other students were in their math and literacy centers. So some of the ethical considerations that I applied, basically keep the information to myself. Also keep yourself informed of all laws and regulations regarding the handling of personal information. Don't share the information. Keep written information in a safe place. Don't use the actual name of the students. Written consent needed from students and their parents, basically all the people involved in the study, along with permission from the associate teacher and the vice principal of the school. And also I made a timeline chart where data collection process, so basically the type of data that I took: anecdotal notes, teacher journals, gathering previous data from teachers who taught the ELL student, running record during guided reading, and basically how often it was collected. It was for anecdotal notes, it was daily during the placement. Teacher journals were monthly reflections captured at the end of each week, and that was during February to April. Gathering previous data from teachers who taught the ELL students beginning of placement and also during observations. And finally, for the running record during guided reading, we did it. It was performed daily during literacy centers. So enclosure of my research, basically designing this action research study would support my knowledge of teaching in various ways. English language learners, or ELLs, are students who are unable to communicate fluently or learn effectively in English, who often come from non-English speaking homes and backgrounds, and who typically require specialized or modified instructions in both the English language and in their academic courses. As a teacher, creating an environment that focuses on teaching ELL students and creating an inquiry-based learning environment will definitely be beneficial for the growth of not only the teacher but also the students. Creating resources that are available to use in teaching practice, such as creating a website that is full of resources and to be able to teach other teachers how to apply and use them in their respective classroom, would definitely help the teacher and the student. In addition, this knowledge will definitely help me as a learner and a teacher, as it will allow me to apply the various practices of how to teach ELL students with the use of inquiry-based learning. Basically, the various sources and journals I've accumulated, along with the communicative information that I've gathered from various sources and from my practicum, will allow me to apply the teaching practices that will be beneficial for me as an educator and to my students in the future.